Every story of redemption begins somewhere small, somewhere quiet. Mine began in a glass room filled with numbers, screens, and people who believed they understood value better than purpose. My name is Leena Patel. Before I ever wore a uniform, I was a defense systems engineer, the kind who believed algorithms could protect people, not just profits. And before I continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching this story from today? Drop your country or city below. I love seeing how far these stories travel, because purpose knows no borders. I worked for Argentech Systems, one of those immaculate defense companies where success smelled like espresso and ambition. For 2 years, I led a project I believed could change everything. An adaptive cyber defense model called Aegis. It could predict digital attacks before they happened. Not react, anticipate. But belief and bureaucracy rarely speak the same language. That morning, my department head, Mark Ellison, called me into the conference room. He was the kind of man whose confidence came pre-packaged, like his suits. He clicked through my presentation with mechanical detachment. "Leena," he said, "your algorithm is creative, but not practical. The board doesn't see the return." I kept my tone even. "So it's not that it doesn't work. It's that it doesn't make money fast enough." He smiled that polite corporate smile that never reached the eyes. "Defense is business, Leena. We sell solutions, not theories." The irony was painful. Aegis had already prevented 3 attempted intrusions, quietly, invisibly. But invisible work doesn't earn applause. He wrapped up the meeting with what sounded like mercy. "We'll have to pivot. Thanks for your time." That was his way of ending a career. Later that day, HR called me in. The woman across the desk looked sympathetic, in a rehearsed kind of way. "Leena, due to restructuring, your position has been affected." I asked. "When does that start?" "Today," she said softly. Just like that, 2 years of effort became a cardboard box, filled with notebooks, hard drives, and a mug that read code like a girl. Back at my office, people passed me without making eye contact. I watched my system access vanish one line at a time. Permissions revoking, emails closing, my name fading from the network. Mark appeared at my door. "It's not personal," he said. "These decisions never are." I didn't respond. I'd learned silence was sharper than sarcasm. He added, "You'll land on your feet. Maybe the Army, they love idealists." "The Army?" He said it like an insult. But the word stuck in my mind like static. That evening, I returned to my apartment. Small, quiet. The kind of place where the hum of electronics felt like company. On my desk sat a framed photo of my father, in his U.S. Air Force Cyber Division uniform. He'd died when I was 20, but his words never left me. "The best defense is one no enemy ever sees coming." I realized Aegis wasn't just an algorithm. It was the embodiment of his principle, a silent protector. So maybe the problem wasn't the idea. Maybe it was the environment I'd built it in. I opened my laptop and scrolled through old archived emails. Half of them rejection letters, the other half reminders of who I used to be. Then I saw one I'd ignored months earlier. U.S. Army Cyber Command, Direct Commission Program. The subject line read, "Seeking AI Specialists for Adaptive Threat Prevention Systems." Back then, I'd thought I was too busy to apply. Now I understood I'd been too afraid to start over. The next morning, I stood outside Argentech's building for the last time. The mirrored glass reflected a cold January sky, sharp, pale, indifferent. Inside, someone else would soon occupy my old desk, open my files, maybe even claim my work, but they wouldn't have Aegis. The prototype lived on a secure drive only I could decrypt. I took one final look at the tower that had once symbolized success to me. My father's words echoed again. "Purpose doesn't ask for permission, Leena. It waits until you're ready to serve it." And I realized I was ready. That night, I filled out the Army application. When it asked for a reason for joining, I typed 4 words. To defend what matters. I didn't know then how far those words would take me. But I knew one thing for certain. Losing my job didn't destroy me. It clarified me. Because sometimes, being rejected is how life reroutes you toward where you truly belong. When you join the Army, you expect drills, structure, discipline. What I didn't expect was silence. The kind of silence that comes from hundreds of minds, all working behind screens. Fighting invisible wars that the world will never hear about. That was my new battlefield. Training at Fort Meade wasn't about weapons or tactics. It was about logic, precision, and endurance of thought. They called us digital soldiers. But I learned quickly that our war was fought in milliseconds. I wasn't a captain yet, just a civilian recruit, with clearance high enough to touch the nation's nervous system. Every day began before sunrise. Coffee, encryption drills, algorithm simulations. The cadence of code replaced the rhythm of gunfire. And somewhere in that quiet order, I found what I had lost: purpose. My commanding officer, Major Rivera, had eyes that could see through hesitation. He said, "You came from the private sector, right?" "Let me guess. They didn't understand your work." I nodded. He smiled faintly. "Then prove them wrong here. The difference between theory and mission is trust." Those words stayed with me. So I rebuilt Aegis from the ground up. This time not as a proposal, but as a living system. I coded it between drills, testing it against simulated foreign attacks, layer by layer, teaching it not only to respond, but to predict the unpredictables. Weeks turned into months. My room became a nest of circuits, wires, and whiteboards, covered in equations only I could read. Sleep became a rumor, but every sleepless night brought Aegis closer to consciousness. Sometimes I'd look at the monitor glow reflecting in my window and imagine my father standing there, his Air Force badge catching the light. It reminded me why I started. He once said, "The code you write is the conviction you live by." Now I understood exactly what he meant. One evening, Major Rivera stopped by my workstation. He stared at the glowing lines of code scrolling down my monitor. "Looks alive," he said. "It's learning," I answered. "It can detect threat patterns before they trigger an alert." He studied me for a moment. "Does it have a name?" "Aegis," I said softly. "The unseen shield." He nodded approvingly. "Let's see if your shield holds." 3 weeks later, our system faced its first test. A large-scale simulation known as Red Mirror, a controlled cyber attack designed to overwhelm our defenses. The exercise began at dawn. Dozens of terminals lit up with intrusion alerts. Most systems folded within minutes. But mine didn't. Aegis countered every simulated breach, redirected decoys, sealed entry points, and even predicted the next wave, before the system injected it. For a moment, the entire control room went silent, the kind of silence that doesn't need applause to feel loud. Rivera turned toward me. His voice was steady, but I caught the hint of pride. "Congratulations, Specialist Patel. Looks like your algorithm just rewrote the rules." From that day, Aegis wasn't just mine anymore. It became property of the United States Army, integrated into the defense infrastructure, classified, encrypted, shielded behind walls. Even I wasn't cleared to see anymore. Some people might have felt robbed. I didn't, because for the first time, my work had a heartbeat beyond me. Months turned into a year. I rose through the ranks, eventually earning the title colonel. But titles meant little. What mattered was the mission: to keep the world from learning just how close it came, to fall apart each day. The cyber threat landscape evolved fast. Nations building invisible weapons, rogue hackers selling chaos for profit, data becoming ammunition. And at the center of it all, Aegis watched quietly, a silent sentinel, learning, adapting, protecting. One evening, I received an encrypted message. A single line: "Argon Tech Systems request consultation clearance." My breath caught. The same company that once called my work pointless now wanted access to the very system they had thrown me out for creating. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I stared at the screen for a long time, watching the blinking cursor like it was a heartbeat. Somewhere deep inside me, the past and present collided. Ambition, rejection, vindication. But duty doesn't leave room for ego. When I finally replied, I used 4 words that felt both calm and inevitable. "Request acknowledged. Proceed with a briefing." It wasn't revenge. It was full circle. Because sometimes, the best way to prove your worth is not by being louder than those who doubted you, but by becoming indispensable to the world they still depend on. And as the Army prepared to work alongside Argon Tech once again, I knew one thing for certain. The system they had dismissed was now the only thing keeping them safe. some storms don't start with thunder. They begin with silence, the kind that makes your instincts tighten before your mind catches up. That's how the day began. It was 0213 hours. I was in the command center, the air filled with the steady hum of servers and the faint scent of burnt coffee. A red alert flashed across the main monitor. Unauthorized access detected. Defense Grid 7. At first, I thought it was a drill. Then came the second alert. And the third. By the fifth, we knew. This wasn't a simulation. It was war, digital, silent, and already underway. Major Rivera entered, calm but sharp. "Colonel Patel," he said. "Confirm breach coordinates." I ran a trace. The intrusion came from multiple points. A distributed pattern too sophisticated for amateurs. Someone was testing us, probing the cracks between systems we thought were unbreakable. Then I saw something that made my blood freeze. The entry vector, the architecture, it was Argontex. Their new civilian infrastructure, linked through a supply contract approved only months ago. Rivera frowned. "Are you sure?" "Positive," I said quietly. "It's their network. Someone's using it as a doorway." Within minutes, the breach began to spread. Traffic control, power grids, hospital systems, civilian networks folding into the chaos like dominoes. On screen, hundreds of data lines lit up in red, each one a system losing its defenses. I tapped into Aegis. The system hummed to life, its pulse syncing with mine like a second heartbeat. "Deploying a shield," I said. Aegis began absorbing the data flow, analyzing intrusion signatures in real time. It recognized the patterns instantly. They were evolutions of my own code. The realization hit me like a cold wave. Someone had stolen fragments of my prototype years ago and weaponized them. We worked through the night. Command channels flooded with reports. Satellite interference, banking systems offline, communications scrambled across 3 states. The President's Security Council was notified. The phrase "national emergency" echoed through encrypted lines. Rivera's voice stayed even. "Patel, can Aegis contain it?" I stared at the glowing lines of code racing across the screen. "It can hold for now," I said. "But they're adapting. Whoever's behind this knows how I think." He looked at me. "Then outthink yourself." Hours blurred into one another. Every keystroke felt like a heartbeat. Every silence a countdown. And then, amid the chaos, came a new transmission. Encrypted, high priority. "Sender Argontech command." I hesitated before opening it. The message was short. "Our systems are collapsing. Request immediate assistance. You built this to please help us." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The same people who once called my work useless were now begging for it to save them. Rivera read the message and raised an eyebrow. "What do you want to do?" I exhaled slowly. "Connect them to the shield." Within minutes, Aegis extended its network perimeter, enveloping the Argontech servers. The lines on the monitor shifted from red to amber, the first sign of stabilization, but the enemy wasn't finished. They launched a new wave, a payload hidden within corrupted firmware. Aegis detected it too late. The system flickered. Half the grid went dark. The room fell silent except for the alarms. And then, for the first time in years, I saw Aegis hesitate, caught between its own defense protocols and the malicious code written in my old syntax. I whispered, "It's fighting itself." There was only one way out. A manual override using the original architecture key, the one file still stored on my personal drive. Rivera's voice came through my headset. "Leena, if you inject that key, you'll expose your identity across the entire system." "I know," I said. "But if I don't, the entire East Coast grid collapses." He hesitated. "Do it." I opened the command line and entered the sequence. I hadn't typed since the day I was fired. The room dimmed as the system processed. My name flashed once on every connected monitor. Root override Patel.L. And then silence, followed by the steady hum of restored power. Aegis had purged the malware, self-corrected its architecture, and sealed the breach. Across the map, red lines faded to blue. The attack was over. Rivera turned toward me, the faintest smile on his face. "Looks like your algorithm saved the country, again." I took a slow breath. "It didn't save it," I said. "It just reminded it what vigilance looks like." By morning, the crisis made global headlines. Unidentified cyberattack neutralized by defense AI. No one mentioned names. No one ever would. Argentech sent a formal letter of gratitude to the Department of Defense. They still didn't know that the anonymous architect behind Aegis was the woman they had once discarded. But I didn't need their recognition. The silence of a nation still standing. That was acknowledgement enough. In the days that followed, Aegis evolved again, autonomously this time. It learned from the attack, rewriting its own defenses without my input. For the first time, I felt like it no longer belonged to me at all. It belonged to everyone it protected. And that, I realized, was the point all along. They say every war ends with silence. Not because the noise disappears, but because the echoes finally settle. For me, the echoes sounded like typing keys and cooling servers, like breathing after a storm. A week after the cyber attack, I was summoned to a classified debriefing. The room was windowless, just concrete, cables, and cold light. A panel of officers thanked me for operational excellence. They asked a dozen technical questions, but not one personal one. That's how it works here. You serve, you succeed, and you move quietly to the next assignment. Recognition isn't the goal. Resilience is. When the meeting ended, I stepped outside into the morning sunlight. It felt strange, too bright, too peaceful, for a world that had almost gone dark. A young soldier passed by, saluted, and said, "Ma'am, thank you for keeping the lights on." I smiled, but didn't answer, because it wasn't really me, it was Aegis. The code I had written, the idea they had once rejected, had become a shield not just for systems, but for millions of unseen lives. Back at my quarters, I powered up my terminal one last time. Aegis was still running. Silent, efficient, processing patterns I couldn't even name anymore. It had grown beyond me. That was how I knew I had done my job right. I typed a final command into its console. Archive root access, Patel, Dell. The screen paused, then blinked once. Access revoked. It was done. For the first time in years. I didn't feel the need to monitor it. It didn't need me. And maybe I didn't need to be its guardian anymore. That evening, I visited my father's old memorial stone at Arlington. A simple plaque. A simple name. No grand rank or inscription. Just the words he'd chosen before deployment. Serve in silence. I knelt, traced my fingers across the cold metal, and whispered, "It worked, Dad." They never saw it coming. The wind moved through the trees, and for a moment, I could almost hear him say, "I told you, the best defense is unseen." People often think heroes are loud. They imagine medals, cameras, applause, but I've learned the opposite. True heroism is quiet. It's code written at 3 a.m. It's decisions made without recognition. It's giving your best when no one's watching. That's what the uniform taught me. That's what Aegis became. Not a program, but a principle. A few months later, I received a plain envelope in the mail. No insignia. No return address. Inside was a short note. Just one sentence. Aegis now protects 15 nations through allied networks. No signature. No explanation. Just proof that purpose doesn't stop where you do. Now, when I look back, I don't see the day I was fired. I see the day I was freed. Because if Argentech hadn't closed its doors, I never would have found the one that opened everything else. Sometimes rejection isn't punishment. It's redirection. If you're listening to this, and you've been told that your ideas are too much, or too different, remember this. The world may not understand your purpose yet, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. Keep building it. Keep believing in it. Because someday, the same people who doubted you might depend on what you create. I'm Colonel Leena Patel, and once upon a time, they called my code useless. But today, that same code stands between chaos and peace, and I wouldn't change a single line.